Have you ever apologized for being a Christian? Probably. It doesn't really sound like I'm a Christian, sorry. It doesn't go like that. It goes a little more like, yeah, well, I am, but not like the ones you knew, not like others. It goes like that. That's what that apology looks like. I make that more often than I'd like because I feel like we are misrepresented more often than we'd like by our fellow Christians, our fellow churches, by media, by people using Christianity. All the time, I feel like I have to apologize when asked. In fact, I try not to tell people what I do. I work really hard, and it only goes for about 30 seconds until that comes up. But I work really hard. Or somebody introduces me as, "Hey, this is my friend," and then they say, "Oh, and this is Bradley. He's the pastor at my church." And I go, "Here's why: because I'm already labeled. Immediately, I am labeled." And Jenna gets it too. It's probably worse as pastor's wife. It's probably worse. It happens immediately, and things change. And it takes sometimes weeks to undo that one line that happened because it happened before they knew who I was. This is a major issue in what we do and how we live out our faith. And it's a problem because Paul tells us, be bold in your faith. He tells us, don't be ashamed. He tells us to be strong in what we know and to be able to account for ourselves. But he's working with a different environment than we are. Maybe it's harsher, maybe it's just different, I don't know. But when he went somewhere, there probably often wasn't a lot of knowledge about what he was about to say about who God was. Maybe that's an advantage. Today it feels like an advantage because everyone knows and they've already decided what they think about you, and they've already decided what they think about faith or about Christianity or about Jesus because they've run across someone like you, right? They've run across someone like you. So that the decisions have already been made. So we have to undo that. And that's a process. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's a process of undoing in ourselves what we think we already know. And that's a little bit about what I want to do with this morning is undo a little bit sometimes of what we think we know. Are there kids left in here? It's time to talk about Santa Claus. So, yeah. Uh-oh. It's time to... Bye, Lachlan. So it's time to talk about Santa Claus. Here's the deal, is that a lot of us think about God like Santa Claus. And we do it even when we think we're not talking about Santa Claus. When this week I was driving somewhere, Chaim was in the back seat, and he's asking me questions. You know, is such and such real? He started with Queen Elsa. Is that the right one? Elsa, Anna. It starts with Queen Elsa. Is Elsa real? No, Chaim. Is the magic snow real? No, Chaim. Are elves real? No, Chaim. And that stopped right there. And as soon as I said it, because I was just running through these things, as soon as I said it, I realized the next question is Santa. And I was like, I don't know what stopped him, but he didn't continue. But I know it's running through his head. Well, if elves aren't, then, I think he followed that with, well, then who helped Santa? And But the problem is we think about God a lot like Santa in things that we do. We start out with this, have you been in that dark place and you go, God, if you can just help me right now, I will do everything right from here on out. Have you been there? You're not alone. We have reports from surfers attacked by sharks that get saved miraculously, swim back with one leg, and tell their story. While it was happening, I asked God, I said, if you can help me through this, I'll devote. And then they don't. That's a different story entirely. So there's a couple of different places we go with this Santa thing. First, we say Santa helps us when we need it. God helps us when we need it. And so Christmas is rolling around, and we go, God, I really need a good Christmas for my kids, for my family. Can you help me out? Or life is tough, and you go, God, I really need some help here. Can you help me out? Or tragedy strikes, and we don't know how to deal with the world. Not everything meshes up because we're told things are supposed to go this way. And when they don't, we go, God, what is going on? Can you help me out? It gets deeper and deeper because the next thing we do with Santa is our kids get a little bit older and we go, well, we tell that Miracle on 34th Street story and Santa's spirit is important to keep, right? Well, Saint Nick gave and gave and gave to people in need, and we need that story. And it's more than a story. It's bigger than a story. It's bigger than life, and we need to be able to share that with our communities so that we can step in and also participate in that aid. But here's the problem: is that we do the same thing with God. Is that we take that same moment and we start to spiritualize or relativize everything and go, well, the Spirit of God is still in need. The story is real. And we start undoing things in our faith so that we can maintain that story. The problem is that we don't understand God in a deep enough way to go past Santa in all of Santa's glory. Not just the I want, but in all of Santa's glory. We take verses like Mark 11. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. We take that into our materialistic world. I think we're okay now. We take that into our lives with what we need out of a relationship, what we need out of something, what we need out of God. That's a story about my needs. Or John 15, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. But those verses single-handedly cannot speak for the whole text and cannot speak for the entirety and the depth of our God. And that's our problem, is we get stuck at that depth level of who God is. Last week we talked about Jeremiah 29:11 and us turning that into a story about ourselves and our personal needs and our bad hair day, and God has plans for me that fix this bad hair day. But this has to go deeper. It's important to remember, and right now we have people literally making a living off of telling the Christian story and how it's wrong. Because they tell about this God, and they tell about it as a crutch. Literally talking about God, Christianity, faith is a crutch. And whether they're doing that intentionally, misrepresenting who God is and the depth of God and what this is about, or whether that's unintentional, a misrepresentation, we certainly know there are plenty of Christians that misinterpret and would interpret it themselves that way. Regardless, That's being used to serve their purpose. And the real issue is that we don't have enough Christians to counter that statement. We don't have enough people of faith that can answer the deeper question about who God is and why it matters. Because we ourselves often stop at that crutch. Often stop, and don't get me wrong, God does those things. God helps us when we're in need, helps us understand things we don't understand, provides a mystery in the world that lets us see the magnitude and the greatness of God. All of that's real. But if we stop there, we set ourselves up for that story being told that Christianity is just a crutch to help people through life. This is what I want you to know today. God didn't have to create you. Let that sink in. If you want to stop with a crutch, let's take that a little bit further. God didn't have to create you. In fact, God didn't have to create, period. There's a little theological dance that goes on in that statement. For many theologians, you back up and you say, no, God's character, this gets weird. No, God's character has to create because that's who God is. God can't help but create. But here's this, whether you do that or not, or whether you talk about God's own will to do whatever God wishes, here's the deal. God didn't have to. God chose to because God loves you. God chose to create because God desires to be in relationship with creation. Does that have anything to do with your needs or your crutch or how we get through life or how we get through the week? No, it doesn't. We stop that in its tracks because that story's being told on our behalf and we don't have the answer. But the truth is, God didn't have to create. And what that means, quite simply, is that everything we have, everything we see, every moment we live is out of God's gracious love. In the same conversation with atheism and the sort of the modern atheistic agenda, we have this conversation that goes to Genesis 1. I love Genesis 1. I really do, and I love it because of this. I love it because we feel in this moment the power of God moving and the desire to be in relationship with us. There's no crutch involved. Whether I make it through the next week or not, right now is a moment of God's gracious love, creating and sustaining. So I always start my theology with Genesis 1 in all of its controversy. I'm quite fine with that. I have no problem getting into that. I'm not going to do it here because you would all get bored really quick. But I do want to read a little bit. I do want to feel the power of the words because it's so moving and it's so powerful in the poetry and the symbolism of everything going on. We're going to do it in the Message, just because that's the Message works to do just that. First this, God created the heavens and earth. All you see, all you don't see. Earth was a soup of nothingness, a bottomless emptiness, an inky blackness. God's Spirit brooded like a bird above the watery abyss. God spoke light, and light appeared. God saw that the light was good and separated the light from dark, and God named the light day, and he named the dark night. It was evening, it was morning, and day one. The power that comes in that voice is the same power that speaks to us today. It's the same power that moves us to act in the spirit of Santa Claus when someone is in need. It's the same power that acts to do all of those crutch-like things. It's also the same power that sustains every breath. Whether we ever get past that graciousness for life or not, whether we ever get past that understanding of God as a crutch, we know right here, right now, that power moves through us and through the world around us. It is a beautiful thing, and where we move as we read through this, where we move is to my next favorite piece. Is that the sharing of God making humanity, it is a blessing to humanity. And sometimes we read that as an order, as a demand, as a commandment, but it's not that. And when we read it that way, we undo the depth of who God is. Because what God is telling you is be fruitful and multiply. It is a blessing to go out and live in the power and the Spirit of God on this earth. And that is a beautiful statement. However you read it, whatever you do with it, that is a beautiful statement. So I'm going to say it again because I want you to hear. God did not have to create. Not you, not period. We can go to God when we're in need. We can take advantage of all that we know about who God is, lovingness, graciousness, future hope, and everything in between. But at the very core, we know in that simple statement that God loves you. God desires to be in relationship with creation. It doesn't get any better than that.